Imagine plugging a cable into the back of your neck, falling asleep, and then waking up the next morning perfectly fluent in English.
Oh, totally. Like The Matrix.
Right, exactly like The Matrix. I mean, it is the ultimate sci-fi fantasy.
Yeah.
Just the desire to completely bypass the awkward, frustrating, conscious effort of learning a language and just download the results while you snore.
It really speaks to a very real exhaustion, honestly,
Hmm.
because for anyone listening right now who is managing a demanding job, full-time studies, or just the absolute chaos of daily life, finding a spare 30 minutes to sit down with a textbook, it feels impossible.
Yeah, it really does.
So the idea of optimizing those 8 hours of downtime your brain already takes every single night is incredibly seductive.
And that is exactly the core mission of our deep dive today.
Yeah.
We're going to separate the magic from the hard neurological science.
Yes.
Because we have pulled together this really fascinating stack of sources for this. We're looking at DIY language immersion guides, transcripts of massively popular sleep learning audio tracks, insights from the Confident Speaking podcast, and even some cutting-edge EEG brain studies.
That's a great lineup.
Yeah. So by the time we finish, we want to map out a practical, scientifically backed blueprint for actually turning your nightly rest into usable language fluency.
I love that. But to understand what is actually possible today, we have to kind of look back at why the scientific community initially labeled this entire concept as a scam.
Wait, they called it a scam?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The obsession with sleep learning, historically, they called it hypnopedia, it peaked in the 1950s. People were buying these clunky mechanical phonographs, placing speakers literally under their pillows, and playing recorded sentences on a loop all night.
Wow, okay, and what were the companies promising?
The marketing claims were completely unrestrained. They promised you could learn Russian overnight, memorize the periodic table, or reprogram your brain to quit smoking, all without a single conscious thought.
Right. So if the scientific community closed the book on those early machines, what exactly did the research at the time uncover?
Well, in the mid-1950s, researchers finally started using EEG machines, electroencephalograms, to monitor the actual brain waves of people using these under-pillow devices.
Okay.
And the findings were definitive. The only time participants actually remembered the audio the next day was if the volume of the recording was loud enough to pull them out of deep sleep into a waking state.
Oh, so they were learning because they were awake.
Exactly, not because they were asleep. If the EEG confirmed the person remained in true deep sleep, zero new information was retained.
Zero. Wow.
Yeah, it was a devastating blow. Hypnopedia was essentially dismissed as a fake shortcut, and the scientific community largely abandoned the whole field for decades.
That makes sense. But if you search YouTube right now, that concept has experienced this massive resurgence. I mean, there are channels with millions of views dedicated exclusively to sleep learning.
It's huge right now.
Like there's this one channel called Zen English that offers these sprawling 3-hour sleep videos, layering language tracks over binaural beats.
Right.
And then another channel, Lingua Marina, plays hours of everyday, highly specific conversations. You have two people casually chatting about ordering a cappuccino with oat milk or discussing a weekend itinerary involving surfing and jujitsu.
I've seen those.
And all of this is engineered to be played while you are entirely unconscious.
Which presents a really fascinating paradox, because we have 1950s EEG data proving the brain doesn't absorb new information while asleep, juxtaposed against millions of modern users claiming these YouTube tracks genuinely improve their English fluency.
Right. Wait, so if exposure builds familiarity, isn't there a severe logical gap here?
What do you mean?
Well, if my brain is powered down, how does it process two people talking about oat milk? Does the brain just act like a sponge that absorbs whatever audio is in the room? Or is this just a massive internet-wide placebo effect?
So, the sponge idea, which is exactly how those 1950s marketers sold it, is entirely inaccurate. Your brain does not passively soak up the room's environment.
Okay.
But the idea that your brain is powered down is also a fundamental misconception. When you close your eyes, your brain does not switch off. It essentially clocks in for the night shift.
The night shift.
Yeah. During sleep, particularly during slow-wave deep sleep and REM sleep, the brain is engaged in a highly complex, aggressive process of file management called memory consolidation.
Memory consolidation. So the brain is actively sorting through the events of the day.
Actively deciding what to keep and what to permanently delete. Throughout the day, your hippocampus acts like a temporary USB drive, quickly gathering information, new vocabulary, experiences, but it has limited storage. So during sleep, The brain replays those experiences and transfers the important data from that temporary USB drive over to the neocortex, which is your permanent hard drive. It basically cements those fragile neural connections.
Okay, but if the brain is aggressively deleting noise, how do we know it isn't just deleting the audio track playing from the YouTube video? Like, did modern researchers actually test that boundary?
They did, and this is where a pivotal experiment from Switzerland, which is highlighted in our sources, completely redefined our understanding of sleep learning.
Oh, tell me about that.
Researchers took a group of German speakers and attempted to teach them Dutch vocabulary. They split the participants into different highly monitored groups. The critical finding was that playing the Dutch audio during sleep only improved memory recall for the group that had already been exposed to those specific words while they were awake.
Oh, okay. So what about the control group? What happened when researchers tried to use the sleep audio to teach brand new vocabulary or complex grammar rules that the participants had never seen before?
It failed entirely. The brain actively filtered it out.
Really?
Yeah, because there was no pre-existing neural pathway formed during the day. The sleeping brain treated the new Dutch grammar rules as irritating, irrelevant environmental noise and just discarded it.
Wow. So the brain is essentially acting like a night shift librarian.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, like the librarian is incredibly hardworking, organizing, categorizing, and filing the books into the permanent archives of the neocortex. But the librarian cannot order new books for the library.
Exactly.
If you didn't check those words out and bring them into the building while you were awake,
Yeah.
the librarian has absolutely nothing to work with.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the mechanism. The librarian can only process the inventory currently on the desk. This is the ultimate non-negotiable reality of modern sleep science. You cannot achieve fluency from scratch in your sleep.
So daytime exposure is a biological prerequisite.
100%. Sleep learning does not generate new knowledge. It physically alters and strengthens the architecture of the knowledge you already have.
Okay, but if the brain isn't building new vocabulary from scratch, what exactly is the physiological benefit of playing audio of people talking about jujitsu at night? Why not just sleep in total silence and let the hippocampus do its transfer organically?
Well, because introducing that specific auditory stimulus while the librarian is working drastically enhances the quality of the filing process.
How so?
When you play audio of words you have already been exposed to, sleep learning accomplishes three distinct neurological tasks. First, it triggers targeted memory reactivation.
Meaning it reactivates the memory from the day.
Right. By hearing the word, you force the brain to replay that specific neural pathway more times than it would have organically, which cements the memory into deep storage and makes it significantly faster to retrieve during a real conversation.
Got it. But what about the structure of the language itself? If I'm listening to a full conversation about surfing, I'm hearing way more than just isolated vocabulary words.
And that brings us to the second task, building passive familiarity. When you listen to native speakers in a relaxed state, your brain maps the prosody of English.
Prosody.
Yeah, prosody is the rhythm, the pitch, and the natural pauses. Your auditory cortex internalizes the music of the language, basically, without the cognitive burden of trying to actively translate every single sentence.
It sounds like it kind of removes the performance anxiety of language learning.
It does. It literally physically alters your nervous system's response to the language, which is the third major benefit. Because for adult learners, fear and psychological intimidation are usually the biggest barriers to fluency.
Oh, for sure. Speaking a new language is terrifying.
Right. When the brain encounters a foreign language, the amygdala, your brain's threat detection center, often spikes. It feels like a complex puzzle you are failing to solve.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But by making English a constant, soothing background element while you are in your safest, most restorative state, you desensitize the amygdala. You neurologically tag the language as a safe, normal part of your environment.
Okay, so let's look closer at how these YouTube channels are manipulating that environment. Because Zen English explicitly markets the use of binaural beats layered underneath their vocabulary tracks.
Yes, they do.
And our sources include a study from Neuroscience News out of the Center for Brain Health that looked directly at this. For context, a binaural beat is an auditory illusion. Like, if you play a 400 hertz tone in your left ear and a 418 hertz tone in your right ear, your brain bridges the gap and perceives a third phantom beat of 18 hertz.
And the brain actually synchronizes its own electrical activity to match that phantom beat. It's a phenomenon known as the frequency following response.
Wow. So the researchers hooked 60 participants up to EEG machines and exposed them to this exact 18 hertz binaural beat. And the results showed that exposure to that specific frequency significantly improved the participants' accuracy and speed in processing complex sentences.
It literally altered their neural language processing.
But hold on a second. An 18 hertz wave is a beta wave, right?
Yes, it is.
And beta waves are associated with being highly awake, alert, and focused. The participants in this study were awake. So if 18 hertz is an alert frequency, why on earth would a channel like Zen English use it or claim to use it while I'm trying to sleep?
That is the million-dollar question.
Doesn't that completely contradict the biological requirement of actually staying asleep?
It is a critical discrepancy, and it really highlights the danger of internet channels blindly applying waking neuroscience to sleep architecture. You are absolutely correct. Beta waves are for active problem solving.
Right.
If an audio track forces your brain into an 18 hertz beta state all night, it will actively block you from entering the delta wave state. And the delta state, which is the 1 to 4 hertz range, is where deep, slow wave sleep and physical restoration actually occur.
So the YouTube channels are potentially using the wrong frequencies.
Many do, yeah. The most scientifically sound sleep tracks do not use beta waves. Instead, they use a tapering frequency strategy.
What does that mean, a tapering strategy?
They might start in an alpha or low beta range as you get into bed, but over the first 30 minutes, the binaural beats should slowly descend into theta waves, which are 4 to 8 hertz, and finally down to delta waves. This basically guides the brain's electrical activity down into the exact stages of sleep required for the hippocampus to begin that file transfer we talked about.
Okay, let's follow that logic then. If the goal is to maximize the brain's exposure to native dialogue and force the auditory cortex to map the prosody of English, shouldn't I just play the most complex, dialogue-heavy audio possible?
Like what?
Like, why not play a fast-paced, high-stakes drama podcast or a rapid-fire news broadcast all night to maximize the sheer volume of words my brain processes per hour?
Because more words do not equal more consolidation.
Really?
If you bombard a sleeping brain with loud, fast-paced news, which often contains inherently stressful vocal tones or drama featuring yelling and sound effects, the amygdala treats it as an environmental threat.
So it interprets the fast, loud audio as a potential danger in the room.
Precisely. It triggers a microarousal in your nervous system. Your brain basically stops focusing on memory consolidation and shifts its resources toward monitoring the threat. It becomes irritating noise that fragments your sleep architecture.
Which is exactly what we don't want.
Right. Sleep deprivation is the absolute enemy of the night shift librarian. If you ruin your slow-wave sleep, the file transfer from the hippocampus to the neocortex simply does not happen. The audio must be slow, calming, and familiar, with no emotional spikes.
Okay, so we have dismantled the historical myth, explored the mechanics of the hippocampus, and established the biological boundaries of sleep audio.
We have.
How do we synthesize all of this into a daily protocol? The Immersion Guide from Ablino outlines a specific system we can call the English Night Garden Blueprint. And it requires bridging your waking habits with your sleeping habits, starting with what they call daytime prep, or DIY immersion.
Yes, and the guide effectively demystifies the whole concept of immersion. You do not need to move to London to immerse yourself in English. You just need micro-habits that seed the hippocampus with raw data.
The guide emphasizes small, high-quality inputs rather than grueling 3-hour study sessions. Like one highly recommended technique is just 10 minutes of active shadowing.
Shadowing is fantastic.
Yet you listen to a native speaker and immediately repeat what they say, a fraction of a second behind them, matching their exact pitch and rhythm.
Shadowing engages your mirror neurons and builds physical motor memory in your vocal cords and mouth. It basically forces your brain to process the mechanical production of the language, not just the passive translation of it.
They also suggest integrating English into frictionless moments of your day, like labeling household items with sticky notes, or taking 8 minutes while your morning coffee brews to run a quick conversational role play using an AI language app.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, you just practice ordering food or asking for directions. These brief 10-minute bursts are the inventory you are checking into the library.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the most sensitive and critical phase of the entire blueprint, the 20 minutes immediately before you go to sleep.
The transition window.
Yeah.
And the absolute first rule here is putting the phone away.
Yes.
The rapid context switching, the blue light, the unpredictable emotional spikes of social media, it completely scrambles the brain's focus. So instead of doom scrolling, you take those final few minutes to manually review 3 to 5 phrases you encountered during your daytime micro-habits.
And this is where the Confident Speaking podcast highlights a really remarkable piece of behavioral neuroscience regarding this pre-bed review. They instruct learners to physically smile while reading over those specific phrases.
Which sounds like a superficial self-help tactic, honestly. But there's an actual chemical mechanism behind it, isn't there?
There is a profound chemical causality. When you voluntarily contract the facial muscles associated with smiling, it triggers a release of dopamine and serotonin in the brain.
Okay.
And dopamine acts as a chemical highlighter pen. When dopamine is present at the exact moment a neural pathway fires, like when you read an English phrase, it physically tags that specific circuit as highly relevant. You are chemically signaling to the hippocampus that this particular piece of information is valuable and should be prioritized during the nightly file transfer.
So you are basically telling the librarian exactly which books are the most important before they even start their shift.
Exactly.
That is incredible. And once you have primed the brain with dopamine, you move to the final step, the sleep setup. You hit play on your carefully curated audio track. It should be a slow, familiar story, perhaps the audio recording of the role play you did that morning, or a gentle loop of phrases.
But this is where we must apply a strict boundary to protect your sleep architecture. You must set a timer.
Right. Set a sleep timer for 30 to 60 minutes. Do not leave the audio running for the entire night.
If you leave continuous audio running for 8 hours, you interfere with the brain's natural 90-minute sleep cycles. While the initial audio helps with targeted memory reactivation during the lighter stages of sleep, your brain requires periods of absolute silence to drop into the deepest stages of slow-wave sleep.
And why is that silence so crucial?
Because it is during these silent, deep stages that the glymphatic system clears out cellular waste and the most profound cognitive restoration occurs. If you play audio all night, you block those restorative processes. You will wake up with brain fog, actively degrading your cognitive function for the following day.
So 30 to 60 minutes provides the brain with that targeted auditory stimulus as you drift off, and then fades to silence so the neocortex can actually do its job.
Exactly.
Well, if you are listening to this right now, the application of this science is entirely within your reach today. You do not need a radical lifestyle overhaul. Tomorrow, spend 10 minutes shadowing a podcast or doing a quick AI role play.
Yep.
Tomorrow night, read over a few of those phrases, physically smile to trigger that dopamine release, put on a familiar, calming audio track at a low volume, set your timer for 45 minutes, and let your biology take over.
I mean, we spend a third of our human lives unconscious. It is a biological tool. Sleep learning does not offer a magical shortcut from zero to fluency, but it utilizes the passive hours of the night as an active amplifier for the deliberate work you do during the day.
It takes your daytime efforts and physically wires them into your long-term memory.
It really does.
Which actually leaves us with a final, somewhat provocative mechanism to consider. We have spent this time analyzing how your brain spends the entire night, silently strengthening, cementing, and wiring in whatever inputs you fed it right before your eyes closed. We know the hippocampus permanently files whatever is currently sitting on the desk. So if you are not intentionally feeling it a language or a positive intention or a skill you actively want to retain, what exactly is that late-night doom scrolling and algorithmic social media binge permanently wiring into your neural pathways every single night?
That is a sobering reality about how we program our own minds.
It really is something to ponder tonight before you drift off. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.